Welcome to another episode of The Riffle, a podcast series brought to you by 10 Leaves.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, of course. Although, actually, I want to pivot right off the bat here. Going forward for the rest of today, we are going to refer to this as a deep dive because honestly, the word episode just doesn't cover the sheer scale of what we are analyzing today.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, we are looking at something massive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for this deep dive, we are unpacking the July 2026 FATF Financial Action Task Force targeted update on implementation of the FATF standards on virtual assets and virtual asset service providers.
That is quite the title, but the contents are, well, they're kind of terrifying.
They really are. Our mission today is basically to decode this high-stakes, multi-billion-dollar cat-and-mouse game, the one playing out between global financial regulators and, frankly, highly sophisticated criminal syndicates operating in the crypto space.
Yeah, and look, whether you, the listener, are actively managing a portfolio with crypto exposure, or maybe you're building compliance architecture in traditional finance, or even if you're just fascinated by the dark side of technology, you need to hear this.
Oh, absolutely.
Because this deep dive, it reveals the hidden plumbing of the modern global economy. Right beneath the heavily guarded traditional banking system, there is this parallel shadow network moving billions in the dark.
And doing it at lightning speed.
Exactly, settling transactions before anyone can even figure out where the digital pipes led.
So to really understand the crimes being committed today, we first have to understand the global rules that are, well, completely failing to prevent them.
Right, the regulatory scorecard.
Yeah, the report focuses a lot on Recommendation 15 and the travel rule, which the core idea is simple, right? The FATF wants crypto transfers to carry the same originator and beneficiary information that, like, a traditional SWIFT wire transfer does.
Yeah, they want a sort of digital passport for the money. But imposing that legacy banking concept onto decentralized ledgers, I mean, it's fundamentally at odds with how these networks were built.
Okay, let's unpack this because the raw numbers in the FATF report are just wild. There's this massive gap between passing a law and actually doing something about it.
Oh, the enforcement gap is staggering.
Right. So 86% of jurisdictions say they've done a risk assessment. Sounds great. And then 83% say they've passed travel rule legislation. But then you read further, and out of 149 jurisdictions, only one is fully compliant. One.
Just one, yeah.
It sounds like putting up a speed limit 65 sign on a highway, but then explicitly telling the drivers, hey, just so you know, we don't have any radar guns and there's no highway patrol.
That's exactly what it feels like. And, this raises an important question. Why is enforcement so difficult?
Is it just countries deliberately looking the other way to bring in money?
You'd think so, like some kind of regulatory capture. But the reality is mostly a profound technical deficit. The FATF found that almost 60% of jurisdictions with travel rule laws on the books haven't taken a single enforcement action.
Not a single one.
Zero. Because identifying who actually controls these digital entities is incredibly complex. I mean, you can't raid a physical headquarters if it doesn't exist.
Right. There's no board of directors to subpoena.
Exactly. You're trying to serve legal papers to a decentralized protocol. If a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, is run by people voting with tokens from 50 different countries, who's the compliance officer?
Nobody, I guess.
Right. So the rules are there on paper, but on the ground, it's just a gaping void.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because criminal organizations, they haven't just quietly stepped into this void. They are operating on a terrifying industrial scale.
The industrialization is probably the most alarming part of this update. We are not talking about lone hackers in basements anymore.
No, not at all. Let's look at the Cambodia situation. The report outlines this single Cambodia-based financial services conglomerate that laundered at least $4 billion between August 2021 and January 2025.
$4 billion through a single node.
Yeah, and this node acts as a clearinghouse for these pig butchering investment frauds, which are run by organized crime groups that heavily rely on human trafficking.
It's horrific. They trap people in these scam compounds and force them to execute social engineering campaigns at just a massive scale.
But the convergence of the crimes is what's truly mind-blowing. Out of that $4 billion, the FATF traced at least $37 million directly to North Korean cyber heists.
Right, the DPRK.
So you have human trafficking rings and state-sponsored hackers from North Korea using the exact same liquidity pools.
Yeah, and that $37 million was directly attributed to funding their weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile programs.
Wow. proliferation financing just happening right out in the open.
Exactly. And it shows how these weak jurisdictions become one-stop shops for every kind of illicit actor.
We see that same corporate-level organization in Operation Borelli, too.
Oh, the Spanish bus. Yeah.
Right. The Spanish Guardia Civil led this with Europol, the U.S., Estonia, France. They took down this fake Forex and crypto ring that laundered 460 million euros.
And they stole that from, what, 5,000 victims globally?
Yeah, 5,000 victims worldwide. But they did it using these incredibly complex Hong Kong corporate structures. It's like modern crypto crime isn't a digital pickpocket anymore. It's a multinational corporation with HR departments, quarterly revenue goals, and global infrastructure.
That is exactly what it is. Operation Borelli is a masterclass in blending traditional finance with crypto to beat chain analysis.
How so?
Well, they set up legitimate-looking shell companies in Hong Kong, take wire transfers from victims, and then push that cash into the crypto ecosystem through multiple nested gateways. By the time it hits the blockchain, investigators can't see the origin.
Because it's buried under layers of corporate banking data.
Precisely. But what's fascinating here is how these syndicates are moving this much volume without tripping the major alarms. They aren't just evading regulatory tools, they're building their own counter tools.
Right. Deliberate regulatory arbitrage through technology.
Yeah.
Like the stablecoin issue.
Yes, the freeze-resistant stablecoins. This is a huge paradigm shift.
Okay, so normally if a legitimate stablecoin issuer gets a warrant saying, hey, this address has stolen funds, they can just blacklist it and freeze the money.
Yeah, that's the standard safeguard. And a legitimate issuer actually did that to the Cambodian conglomerate we talked about. They froze $29 million of illicit funds.
Which is a huge hit.
You would think so. But the criminals didn't just accept it as a loss. They intentionally built and rolled out their own proprietary USD-pegged stablecoin.
Wait, really? They just made their own?
They made their own, and they specifically designed the smart contract to be freeze-resistant. They explicitly removed the blacklist function from the code.
So no law enforcement agency could freeze it.
Not even the creators could freeze it. They engineered compliance completely out of the protocol. If the code doesn't allow a freeze, a court order is mathematically useless.
That is wild. And they're doing this with terrorist financing too, right?
Unfortunately, yes. Groups like ISIL and Al-Qaeda are pivoting away from Bitcoin.
Because Bitcoin is too public.
Exactly. The chain analysis is too good now. So they are moving to stablecoins, specifically Tron-based USDT.
Because Tron is fast and the fees are practically zero.
Right. And they use this technique called microsplitting. It is a nightmare for investigators.
How does that work?
So instead of sending, say, $50,000 at once, they run automated scripts that break it into thousands of tiny transfers. And they route them through temporary single-use addresses while using relay services to pay the gas fees from completely separate wallets.
So it breaks the link.
Totally breaks the clustering heuristics investigators rely on.
Man. And we haven't even talked about the AI threat yet. The FATF report mentions criminals are supercharging this stuff with artificial intelligence.
Oh, the AI stuff is insidious. They're using synthetic profiles and deepfake video interviews for recruitment scams.
I read that part. They stole over $1 million doing that.
Yeah. Criminals literally use deepfakes to pass technical job interviews at legitimate decentralized protocols.
They got hired as deepfakes.
Yes. They got hired, spent months building trust with the dev team, and then used their internal access to deploy malicious code or just trick their colleagues into handing over administrative keys.
That is, I mean, it's the ultimate insider threat, except the insider isn't even a real person.
Exactly. And beyond social engineering, they are using open-weight AI coding assistants to actively hunt for vulnerabilities in smart contracts.
So the AI just reads the code and finds a way to hack it.
In seconds, an AI agent can map out a protocol, generate a zero-day exploit, and execute the attack path faster than any human auditor could ever catch it.
Okay, let me push back on something, though. We're talking about all this high-tech sci-fi stuff, right?
Yeah.
AI exploits, proprietary stablecoins. But the report says a massive chunk of the risk comes down to something super basic. Unhosted wallets.
Right, peer-to-peer transfers.
Yeah, P2P, which is basically, is it the digital equivalent of handing a criminal a briefcase of untraceable, non-sequential cash in a dark parking garage?
That is the perfect analogy because there is no regulated exchange in the middle. There's no obliged entity to file a suspicious transaction report.
But here's the crazy part. 88% of jurisdictions rate P2P transactions as high risk. but only 23% are actually collecting market metrics on them.
I know.
How do you identify your biggest blind spot and then just decide not to measure it?
It's an operational deficit.
It's-
Most financial intelligence units just don't have the budget, the software, or the trained personnel to parse that much raw blockchain data.
Yeah. So what does this all mean when we zoom out and look at the global map of VASPs? Because all this dirty money, eventually it has to hit the traditional banking system. You can't buy a mansion with an unhosted wallet.
No, you can't. And that brings us to the structural loopholes, specifically offshore VASPs or OVASPs.
Right. They incorporate in some weak jurisdiction where nobody is checking.
Exactly. But they solicit customers all over the world. They even teach users how to use VPNs to bypass local geo-blocking.
But wait, how do they actually plug into the real banking system? A Tier 1 exchange in Europe isn't going to just accept a billion-dollar wire from a shady offshore casino. They have KYC rules.
That is where the nested account vulnerability comes in. It's like a matryoshka doll of corporate APIs.
Okay, walk me through that.
So the offshore VASP goes to a fully compliant Tier 1 exchange and opens an account. But they lie about their business. They say, oh, we're a high net worth algorithmic trading desk.
So the Tier 1 exchange just thinks they have a really active corporate client.
Exactly. The exchange does KYC on that specific shell company and approves the account. But in reality, that shell company takes its API access and quietly assigns sub-accounts to thousands of unvetted, illicit users on its own offshore platform.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So when a criminal makes a trade on the shady platform, the API fires the order to the Tier 1 exchange.
And the compliance team at the Tier 1 exchange is completely blind to it.
Completely. They just see their approved corporate client making another trade. They're effectively banking an entire shadow exchange without knowing it.
That is a massive loophole. And if nested accounts are bad, decentralized finance, DeFi, seems even worse. The report says out of 142 surveyed jurisdictions, only 4 have imposed licensing on DeFi.
And only 2 have actually licensed one in practice. 2 jurisdictions in the whole world.
Why is it so hard to regulate?
Because DeFi is built to avoid a central controller. If the developers burn their administrative keys and the governance is just thousands of anonymous token holders voting on-chain.
Who do you even penalize?
Exactly. Who do you subpoena? If the website is hosted in Iceland, the coders are in Singapore, and the smart contract is on Ethereum, whose laws apply. It is a structural nightmare for regulators.
Which means when you, the listener, interact with borderless financial tech part, maybe you're holding a stablecoin or using a decentralized exchange, this is the chaotic, poorly policed ecosystem your money is floating through.
Sharing the exact same digital pipes as Cambodian human trafficking compounds and North Korean weapons programs.
Exactly. And this is why the FATF is urging a massive, coordinated global response. Because you can't just regulate half of a borderless digital internet.
No, you can't. If one country enforces strict rules but the neighbor ignores nested accounts, the money just routes around the obstacle with an API call. Regulators have to harmonize their rules and share intelligence in real time.
Before we wrap up, I know you had a final thought on this, kind of building on the FATF report, but looking a bit further down the road.
Yeah, I do. We've talked a lot about how these syndicates are evading the legacy system, but I want you to consider this. They are actively building their own counter-infrastructure now.
Right. The proprietary stablecoins and the AI.
Exactly. If criminal networks are building their own freeze-resistant currencies and using open-weight AI to automate their own localized economies, at what point do they stop being just, criminal enterprises?
Wow.
When do they become functionally indistinguishable from sovereign shadow nations? And more importantly, what happens to traditional fiat investments when the global financial system is inextricably linked to this parallel dark economy?
Man, that is a deeply unsettling question to ponder, especially as the lines between traditional finance and decentralized ledgers just keep blurring.
That's something we all need to be watching closely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you a lot to think about. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning what's beneath the surface.